Charlotte Market Buzz, your daily show on all things real estate in the Charlotte metro region. I hope you are having a wonderful Thursday. Happy Thursday to you. And I want to talk about some topic that might be a little bit controversial for some people, and it's important for me to have this conversation this morning because it's come up a little bit today in my business. So, let's talk real estate lawsuits today. And I know that this is not really news and it's no sort of uh, anything local, as far as it's not affecting just Charlotte, but it affects all consumers, all buyers, and all sellers in the real estate market, not only here in Charlotte, but across the country. And I have these conversations a lot because there's a lot of confusion. And I want to kind of get to it, and I want to talk um, to you from sort of a consumer side as well as an agent side, because obviously there's two parties here in a real estate transaction when it comes to signing an agreement. You have the firm, the real estate firm, and you have either the buyer or the seller. And the commissions do affect everyone. So last year there were some real estate settlements. Okay, there were a number of lawsuits that were in the works for a long time, and uh, they basically, the biggest, there's a lot of things in these lawsuits, but the biggest thing is the cooperative compensation idea. Here's how cooperative compensation works. An agent goes to a person's home that wants to sell their house, and they decide that that is the agent that they want to work with. Okay. The agent has a document, buyer agency or listing agreement, and that listing agreement said that the firm would get paid X amount of commission, and that the firm would pay X amount out of that total commission to a buyer's agent. Okay, that is what cooperating compensation is. It is one firm collecting commission and sharing that commission with another firm, the buyer agent's firm. Okay, could be the same firm if dual agency is okay in that state. So that's what cooperating compensation means. It's just the money is collected from the listing firm and is shared with the buyer agent firm. That's it. Now, before, well, I think it was August 1st or August 15th, all of the buyer agent commissions that were offered that were shown on the MLS. So the theory here was that real estate agents were shopping or not showing homes to buyers where the compensation was lower. Okay. Now, I can tell you that over the years, compensation has been shrinking. Okay. When I moved to the Charlotte region from the Maryland market, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Northern Virginia markets, our compensation up there was it's kind of averaging 2.5, sometimes less, sometimes more. Down here, when I first came here to Charlotte, the compensation was almost exclusively 3% for one side of a transaction. And that has shrunk over the years. And we're now seeing 2.5, 2.7. I think the national average is still about 2.7%. So they've been shrinking some. They haven't shrunk a lot. We haven't seen a massive reduction in commissions since these lawsuits. There's a couple things that have happened. Number one, those commissions are no longer displayed on the MLS, and I don't have an issue with that. Those commissions, they've always been negotiable. Although I will admit, I have been at firms that have said, we're not accepting commission below X. And I actually did run across an agent the other day that is still at a firm that still does that. So that to me is a little not good. It's just not, because all commissions are negotiable. What if I have a buyer that comes to me that says, or a seller that comes to me that says, "Look, Ann, I want you to represent me in the sale of this house. I have the buyer. The buyer is my next door neighbor. They want to buy the house, but I want to have an agent list this house and represent me to the best of their abilities. We have the buyer, it's going to go on the market. You can take cell phone photos, throw it up there. That's it. Or we don't have to put it on the market. I just want you to represent me in this transaction." Or, I mean, if I don't have to do any marketing, I don't have to do photos, I don't have to do drones, walkthrough videos, any of that. And all I'm doing is communicating on the phone. Yeah, I'm not going to do that for a lot. Eh, You know, everything's negotiable. Now, if I get a house where I've got to bring in a stager, houses maybe is vacant and I'm going to have to go over to the house a lot, and the house is complicated and it's going to need a lot of marketing, it's going to need marketing time and it's going to be tough, then yeah, that is going to be a different scenario. So I look at every scenario differently. I do not have I charge X across the board. I have several different marketing plans that I show to sellers. And here's the thing, I have a conversation with them about whether they want to offer cooperating compensation, or they want to have a conversation about compensation of the at the time of the yeah, my internet's blinking today. At the time of the offer, bring me the offer with a compensation request. Now, I'm a fan about paying buyers agents. Okay, it's how I am. I think buyers agents work hard. Um, it's tough to show a buyer a house. If you're have a, I mean, I know a lot of agents that show 10, 15, 20 houses to a buyer, 30 houses. I got a friend that saw 96 houses when they bought their house. And the house they bought was house, like, it was in the top 20 of homes they saw, first 20. But so anyway, they work hard. And I do think that they should be compensated. My compensation might be different from theirs. Everybody's different. Okay. And my take is this: if you don't pay a buyer's agent, it's going to cost you. And it's going to cost you either in the price of the house, or it's going to cost you marketing time. And that is just the way that I operate. So here are the changes: no cooperating compensation on the MLS. Okay. Here's another big one. And I'm not a fan of this. Okay. Is no, we have to have a mandatory buyer agency agreement signed before I show a house to a buyer. And here's the reason why: because there is no mandatory compensation. Okay. And no compensation is shown on the MLS. There's no cooperating agreement. Okay. There's no agreement between listing firm and buyer agent firm. And that MLS, that number on the MLS used to be the agreement. The MLS says this, the firm is paying this. Now it's gone. Okay. So every buyer has to be aware of what their agent, how their agent handles compensation. Okay. So what if you are a buyer with not a lot of funds? Okay. You are stretching your limit and you have an agent that says, I charge X. I charge X, whatever it is. And if the seller won't pay me, you have to pay me. And if the seller will only pay partial, you have to pay partial, the other part, and make up the difference. And I don't knock that agent for saying that. That is their business model. They are allowed to do that. So if you cannot afford extra compensation to your agent, okay, then you need to be aware of what the compensation offers are for the listing before you go in. What if that listing does not offer any cooperating compensation? then I don't think it's a really good idea to go see that house. So we as agents, because we have to sign that buyer agency agreement up front, we need to have a conversation, and it's a good conversation to have. A conversation to have about the compensation and honestly, how the compensation's earned. I think that nobody understands how that compensation is earned and when is it earned. In many states, and in the states that I operate in, compensation is earned once we get past that due diligence period. If that due diligence period is over and the buyer walks away, that is a breach of contract, and that commission is due at the time of the breach. That's what's happened. That's what our contracts say. And I don't think that people understand that. I've had a couple of buyers that have breached contract. I've had a couple of buyers that have threatened to breach contract. And it's such a good idea to have this conversation up front. I think that most people want to know what they're signing. I think that they want to know what the listing agreement says. What are the roles of a seller and their listing agent? What are the roles in a buyer agency agreement for the buyer agent and the buyer? And what are the ramifications if either party does not stick to the contract? So having these conversations up front, Mrs. Buyer, here's my situation. And this is my conversation with people. I love doing this, but this is my job. I am a full-time agent and I have a family and a home, and I have to make my living from doing what I do. I charge a certain amount for commission, and I do my very best to get that commission from the seller. If we run into a situation where that commission is not covered reasonably, then you and I will have a conversation about that. I do think it's a good idea to have a conversation with your lender just in case we are in a situation where there's no compensation or it's really low. But that's the conversation I have with my buyers, because I want them to understand that there could be a situation where compensation is not offered. And if that is the case, they need to know that up front. Now, do I start every showing request by asking for compensation? No, I do not. A lot of agents do. Now, here's one thing that agents cannot do, at least in North and South Carolina. They cannot say, here is my compensation agreement. You have to sign it before I will show the house. That's actually very bad. And that's not something that we are allowed to do. Now, agents do it, but it is not what we are supposed to do. What we are supposed to do is go show the house and deal with the compensation as it comes up later. I don't bother listing agents with conversations about compensation until I know that my client wants to buy the house or has interest in the house. And then I have a conversation. Hey, is there any compensation offered? Okay. So that is how I handle it. Now, every agent's going to handle their commission stuff different. Okay. But there's a few givens here that you as a consumer need to know. Number one, buyer agency commission, listing agent commission is always and always has been negotiable. You do not have to hire a listing agent. You can sell for sale by owner. You do not have to hire a buyer's agent. You can purchase your home as a singular owner. There is no rules against it. Now, if you do hire an agent to protect your interests, whether you're a seller or a buyer, you need to have the compensation conversation. You know, all of my sellers do. I want to try to keep the compensation to X, or Mr. Seller, can we talk about compensation? Where do you want to be in this conversation? So I always talk about compensation. I'm very upfront about it. Many agents are very uncomfortable with that conversation. And it may be because they don't have that many conversations about it because they don't sell many houses. It may be that it just makes them super uncomfortable to talk about money, and their personal compensation with a buyer or a seller. I don't have that trouble because I mean I'm a full-time agent. I make a full-time living with this, and I have to. And if you were going to work and and have variable pay, you would want to know or negotiate for your pay so that you could earn fairly. Okay. People forget that taxes are not taken out of my commission checks. Insurance is not taken out of my commission checks. Nothing is taken out of my commission checks. I have no safety net. I have to pay for my own insurance. I have to deduct my own taxes. I have to or withdraw taxes and save them for tax time and file quarterly. Yeah, these are the things that I have to do to out of my commission check, plus split some with my firm. So our commissions, even though people might see a number, that number is not it's not all profit. Okay. So I wanted to talk about this today because it is coming up quite a bit. I want to have the compensation conversation with my buyers very, very early. And I do it not to scare people off, but I feel like I would rather have a tough conversation with you in the beginning. And so we're all on the same page and you know where I sit and I know where you sit rather than at the end, because I feel like that ending conversation, especially a conversation that's like, you never told me about this. I am terrified of those conversations, but I'm not terrified of the conversation up front. At least we can talk about it and have an understanding and be on the same playing field about compensation. Now, one thing that I can do as a buyer's agent in North and South Carolina, not every state is like this, so this is not gospel for anything but North and South Carolina. I can sign a one house or 1 day listing agreement. Okay. Or buyer agency agreement, excuse me. I want to make things as easy as possible. I understand that if you're going to go show a house and you're talking to some agent that you've never spoken to before, that it's a tough sell to sign something with them before you've met them and before you get to know them. I completely understand that. And I am not a fan of this buyer agency prior to showing. I don't think it does favors for buyers. However, if you would like me to show you that house and you're okay with signing an agency agreement for one property, just so we can get in the house and we can meet and show each other, I am completely fine with it. I don't have an issue with it, and I hate to lead into a relationship with a pile of paperwork. So we sign a buyer agency agreement for one house, and I do send you a disclosure that just says it talks about buyer agency and what listing agents do and what dual agency is, and that's the conversation there. But and I hate that I'm sending you paperwork, but I'd rather be upfront with the compensation instead of at the end. And here is the conversation that prompted me today to have a conversation about this, which is I am a buyer's agent and my buyer is paying cash for a house. They are at the top of their budget, meaning they are out of money with this house. And the listing agent or the listing firm nor the seller are offering compensation. If the buyer can't pay me and the seller won't pay me, how do I navigate through this? And my thought is, man, that's a tough situation to be in. It's a very tough situation to be in, and the buyers really want the house. But I'm wondering if there was a conversation about compensation up front. You know, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, this is what I charge. Now, I usually try to get it from the seller, and in most cases, I am successful. But there may be a time out there that I find a seller that is not offering compensation and has dug their feet in about it. And if you are at the top of your budget and we cannot work this out, how am I going to get paid? Okay. I think that is a conversation for every agent before they get into a relationship with a buyer, because it's important for all parties to know. Now, do I think that these lawsuits have created a ton of transparency? No, I don't. I think it's made it very I think it's caused more moving parts that I have to navigate as an agent, and let me tell you, there are a lot of moving parts here. I will not lie to you and tell you that, like, it's like, have you ever seen the back of a watch, that like a pocket watch that had a glass backing so you could see all the inner workings and the cogs and everything working together in tandem for the timepiece to operate. It really a real estate transaction, I look at that in the same type of operation. All things have to be clicking together and working in tandem, and having more puzzle pieces to throw into the mix just makes things a little bit more difficult. Is it a hard thing to navigate? Typically not. Will there be times in my career that we will have some tough navigation? I am absolutely positive there will be. It's just part of what we do as real estate agents. However, there's a couple of things that you do need to know. Compensation is negotiable. Don't let anyone tell you it isn't. Now, it doesn't mean that that agent won't negotiate, because you might run across some agents that are like, this is what I charge, X amount. That's it. It's non-negotiable. And that's their business model. But it's also your right to say, well, you know what? I think I'm going to go find an agent that's going to be a little bit more reasonable, or somebody that we get along with a little better. So it may be in your best interest to not sign a lengthy buyer agency agreement until you find an agent that you work with really well and you like and seems to have your best interest at heart. So you can sign a shorter one if the state allows it. Okay. So you can sign a shorter buyer agency agreement if the state allows it. You can negotiate that commission. Yes, we always, always, always try to get it from the sellers. And in the vast majority of cases, it is not even a thing. It's not a thing that we talk about. But in those few cases where buyer agency agreement is not negotiable or is not there, then it's on the buyer. It's incumbent upon the buyer. And either it's going to have to be worked out in the loan or with cash from your bank account. So this is a good conversation, I think, to have. We'll probably talk about it again at some point. I'm just going to look down at my notes to make sure that I haven't forgotten any things, because I think the biggest thing that's come out of this is that mandatory buyer agreement prior to. And there's still a lot of agents that don't do it. And frankly, if I was going to show my mother a house, I probably wouldn't do it up front because it's my mother. But for many, people we meet, we might not know each other real well. I wouldn't have no expectation of you diving in head first off the deep end with me in a first meeting. I would like to have the opportunity to earn your business, but to lock you in for 30, 60, 90, 120 days I don't think is in anyone's best interest right at first. Okay. And then the other part of it is compensation is negotiable, which means that the seller doesn't have to offer any. So it could be on the responsibility of the buyer. So make sure you're having that conversation up front with your agents. It's so important that you do that. And that way, I don't know about you. I don't like surprises. I don't want to be surprised at all. So if I'm not going to I don't want surprises. I don't want to be halfway through a transaction or fall in love with a house and find out that I've got to pay 12,000 or 15,000 or $20,000 extra to pay my agent. I don't want to have that conversation. What I want to have that conversation, or when I want to have that conversation, is up front. And I would expect that most consumers do as well. If you're selling your house and using an agent, you will know how much it's going to cost you. And in reverse, I think that those buyers need to know as well. And let's say one thing here, because I hear from time to time, well, I can just work it into my loan. Oh, not so fast. Not always. We can offer more and increase the price, but if the home doesn't appraise or the lender won't allow it, then that compensation has to come from somewhere else. So this is, like I said, these are all the inner workings, and everything has to line up. It's like a big puzzle. Things have to line up well for all this to work together. And having someone that can help you navigate it is so important. Having these tougher conversations in the beginning, doing your paperwork up front so that you know what to expect and how to expect it and what it's going to cost you is an important piece of this puzzle. So I hope this has been informative to you today. I'm sure I've rambled a little bit, but it's an important conversation to have. So please don't be afraid to have it with your agent. It's better to get it out of the way and talk about it up front rather than wait and be nervous about maybe not being able to get a house because of the compensation. If you have any questions about this, you can always reach out, send me a DM. You can always sign up for my newsletter, cltmarketbuzz.com, cltmarketbuzz.com. Please like and subscribe. I would love, love, love to hear from you. So let me know if you have any questions. I hope you have a great Thursday. I will see you tomorrow, 9:30. Have a good one. I'll see you soon. Bye.